Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has issued a stern warning to the United States following a wave of Israeli strikes on Tehran. Khamenei rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's call for surrender and warned that any U.S. military intervention would result in irreparable damage. This comes just days after Israel launched overnight strikes on Tehran. The Israeli military says 50 jets were involved in the operation. I'm joined now by Professor Chris Isike, Director of the African Center for the Study of the United States at the University of Pretoria. A very good afternoon to you, Prof. Thanks very much for your time. Well, the U.S. President has said, surrender, that's all we are asking of you to do, Iran. The Iran Supreme Leader, of course, saying that, warning that any military involvement by the Americans would, quote unquote, cause irreparable damage to them. Your thoughts?
Well, good afternoon, Vuyo. So we're actually in interesting times, and these kinds of warnings from President Trump, even though he had indicated before that they had nothing to do with these Israeli attacks, is quite worrying, and it gives the possibility of the current conflict or war as it is to spiral beyond its current scope. And this can have regional and even global implications, you know, for the world, and that carry very profound risk for everyone with multifaceted implications.
You have people talking about the possibility of a World War III, God forbid. But your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, because of the global ramification that this can have. So regionally, it will start from the region where both Israel and Iran exercise influence through very powerful proxy groups, like they talk about the Hezbollah, although they've been degraded now severely by Israel. But you still have shreds of the Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and then you have the Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, which are very pro-Israel as it is. So any misstep, you know, right now, any miscalculation can ignite simultaneous, fighting across multiple fronts, in the region. We already know that the Houthis have launched some missiles at Israel. If the Americans decide to get into this war and fire those heavy bunker busters to try and degrade or destroy Iranians, nuclear sites, especially the one in Fordo in the mountains, this kind of direct great power involvement would elicit a response from other countries, not just in the region, but perhaps Russia, which has a very delicate relationship between both countries, but China as well, depending on how things go. But the real issue I'm concerned about, which would have implications for those of us sitting here in South Africa, would be the global and economic, the global energy and economic shocks that can come out of this. So the Iranians have indicated that they are not foreclosing any possibility, and that can include, bombing the Straits of Hormuz, which could disrupt 20% of global oil exports, and that can spike the prices of oil to up to $150 per barrel, and that will bring about a global inflation that will affect every one of us, wherever we're sitting.
Well, speaking of Russia, Moscow issued a statement saying what the Israelis are doing is in fact wrong, illegal. Then you had other people saying very rich coming from you, who are still mired in a war that has been going on for 3 years, and which certain people argue is actually just as wrong and as illegal.
Absolutely, and it's this kind of contradiction, that kind of hamstrings China, Russia, and even China that has the same ambitions for Taiwan. And so you have a bunch of people sitting in the UN Security Council deciding our security, the global security, but all of them are tainted one way or another by national interests that do not augur well for the rest of the world. And this is the reason why some of us are beginning to talk about the need for us to rethink our global governance systems, because they just do not work because of these kinds of vested interests. Because we can begin to ask questions around why is it that Netanyahu has been talking about Iranian nuclear threats that since the 90s. He's been talking about how within 2 to 3 years, since 1992, within 2 to 3 years of that, Iran was going to develop a nuclear bomb. And then we have waited more than 30 years, and it has sometimes been, next summer, next winter, and this time he says, within months, and then he uses this 30 years old lie as justification to go and bomb Iran. Okay, I'm not excusing the regime there, but what Israel did is illegal, and it can't be that the same people who are so lawless, considering what they've done in Gaza, have the temerity to be able to do what they've done, and then everyone keeps quiet. So they're keeping quiet because one way or another, most of the world leaders that should be able to speak out are complicit in some of the things that they accuse Israel of doing, and so are unable to do anything. And at the end of the day, we are the ones that are going to be in trouble, basically.
Of course, the irony is also not lost when it comes to Donald Trump himself demanding unconditional surrender from the Iranians, yet he didn't display the same attitude when it comes to Israel and what is happening in Gaza. But what do you make of that statement of Donald Trump where he says, we have no plans to kill him, at least for now?
It's threatening, isn't it? It's very threatening. And this is the same man who 18 hours earlier was saying that America has nothing to do with what Israel was doing, and that it's okay for these countries to fight it out once in a while. And then he goes for the G7 and suddenly cuts it short and runs back home to make this threats. So it's either that they were in it all along, allow goad Iran into a negotiation that made them vulnerable because they did not expect that there was going to be an attack on the eve of a negotiation for a nuclear deal with the US. And then get their air weaponry degraded to allow for America to come in with the bomber jets that would destroy their nuclear weapons. Now, if that was the plan all along, then Donald Trump played it well. But I don't think he even has the capacity to be able to see through that kind of plan, because he shoots from the hips and he talks based on his whims and caprices. So for me, it would be my second option, which is that he's going wherever the wind is blowing him. And if he gets intelligence that America could actually join the war now and end this once and for all, he's going to take it like the opportunist that he is. So it's just sad that these are the kind of people that are leading the world as it is in terms of our collective security.
But what is at stake for the United States that its president would say, I can kill the president of Iran if we wanted to, and for him to send even more military aircraft and warships to the region? What's at stake for the U.S. here?
Well, I think that, I have once asked a top American official last year if in the South African palace, America has been captured by Israel, okay? And I asked this question because of the audacity with which Benjamin Netanyahu was prancing around the world like world leader while President Biden sat and watched. You would think that someone like Donald Trump, who has a big ego, would want to, retrace that and reclaim American dominance and power and world leadership. But that has not been the case. So it's an alignment of interest between the United States and Israel, and what is Israel's interest is America's interest in this case. So what is at stake for them is to try and reduce the threats that Israel faces from Iran and establish Israel as the sole hegemon in the Middle East, and that will help to get them to do whatever they want to do in the region, even though right now they are really not being impeded. So it's really very confusing. It's a good question to ask. The answers are not clear except to say that it's an alignment with Israeli interests in the region.
Who, if anyone, whether it's a person or a country, can actually expose some of the inconsistencies within the American foreign policy, to the extent that those or such a person or such a country would even be able to put a stop at some of the things, and I'm going beyond the threats here, some of the things it is able to do, like in this instance, being able to send military aircraft, whether it's to Ukraine or to Israel?
Well, contradictory as this may sound, it would be another nuclear power, right? If Russia were to say, for instance, that they would join in the conflict if America was to bomb Iran, that would send danger signals, post messages to the US. And maybe the US can begin to, for once, play the role of a neutral world leader, even though it is not exactly neutral in this case. China could also play that role. The problem is that, like we said earlier on, these countries have their own vested interests in the system. However, because they are nuclear powers themselves, they can try and reclaim some of the balancing role that they are supposed to be playing as balancers of world power. They are not able to do so. I can tell you, even North Korea can throw a spanner in the works of America if they threaten to come to the aid of Iran militarily. Because right now it's almost as if might is right and the air is clear for anyone to go and bomb Iran to pieces. And even President Trump saying that we know where the Ayatollah is and he's safe for now. Those kinds of careless and very responsible statements to make, and they are making them because there is just no one who can push back outside the realm of military force. We can begin to look at other interlocutors, soft power agents like the Pope, for instance, could be restraining. A voice at this moment, and maybe just maybe other Western leaders can be bold enough to call this life for what it is. That Israel has not brought any proposal for peace to the table. All they have done is warmongering and bombing, killing innocent women and children. And there's no end game. There is no proposal to say, okay, this is what we're doing. Even if we achieve regime change here, this is the plan to ensure that there's democracy in the region. There's just nothing. So after the war, what next? What is the plan for the day after? There is just none. And we've seen a bit of those from people like Emmanuel Macron. We just wish that they can be bolder and more consistent in pushing for a position of neutrality and speaking for a two-state solution to the Palestinian question, and listening to the voices of other leaders in the Gulf states, for instance, who can also be role players in this as well.
Prof, I'm only asking this. We seriously run out of time. On the back of what you said, the examples that you cited, one wonders if Russia wasn't able to defeat the Ukraine in the past 3 years, which some analysts say it's precisely because it has very limited power to do so. How would it then intervene? And if you take China, which is another example you've cited, why have they been reluctant up to this point to really get involved?
Well, they've been reluctant, and not necessarily because they can't get involved, because even though Russia has been degraded in some ways, it's still a nuclear power, right? If Iran was a nuclear power, there was no way Netanyahu would have done what he did. So it seems to me that nuclear powers tend to respect each other because they know that if you have a crazy leader behind the button, it can be pressed at any time. Donald Trump is one with a madman theory of foreign policy analysis. There is no greater one right now than Benjamin Netanyahu himself. So if you present a Putin or the North Korean president also coming to the fray, it will cause them to sit down for once and realize that there are multiple actors at play here. It's not just about their military power, but their potential to bring in the nuclear arms, since everyone appears to be acting crazy right now.
Professor Isike, let me thank you very much for your time. Director of the African Center for the Study of the United States at the University of Pretoria.